All right, welcome everybody to another AI plus Entrepreneurs, AI plus EO workshop. It's Thursday, May 21st, and today we're going to be talking about token optimization. This is a super important topic now that we've officially transitioned from the age of AI chatbots into the age of AI agents. Agents consume a lot of tokens, and if you do not have them well optimized, or if you just click one wrong setting on your Claude account, you can wake up to some surprise bills being, what the heck? What's this $500 bill for? I hardly did anything. So today we brought in a couple of expert panelists. We've got Av, say hello, Av, and we've got Greg. And we'll be introducing them shortly. But first, I wanted to kick it off with a quick macro view. I've got 5 or 6 slides to go through. It'll be less than 10 minutes. And then we've got Jeanette, who will be moderating, facilitating. She's got a series of questions. If you have additional questions that you would like to ask, just post them in the chat window. And then Jeanette, if you see anything that you like there, you can pull from the questions from the audience as well. Now we've got 1 hour for the panel in the intro, and then we have an additional half an hour for open Q&A with the general audience. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm excited selfishly to learn from Av and Greg. They're way more technical than I am. And if you've been on my talks before, you're probably like, really? Yeah, they are, 30 plus years software development backgrounds. So I'm really excited to see what additional things I can learn. So that's why we went with the panel format. So first of all, if you stumbled in here and you're expecting a nice, easy workshop on AI, brace yourself. Token optimization is probably the more nerdier side of AI, but it is important. So we're going to start with a little bit of a definition. First of all, what is a token? Tokens are really just the measure, the way that we pay for AI models. It's the unit of exchange. In the past, if you would pay for access to a server, we would get charged for bandwidth, the back and forth of the data flowing between servers. Now they measure that in tokens, and tokens are really just a piece of a word. So in this example, hello world, you can see that's broken up. That is 4 tokens. And on average, 1 token works out to be about 0.75 of a word in English. Do you need to know more than that? I mean, maybe in a different course or a different class, if you want to go down the AI development rabbit hole or AI engineering. But for most of us, we don't need to know more than that's how we get charged, how we get billed, and that the way that you optimize how you're running your AI can have a massive impact on total cost. I've seen multiple cases just from me working with clients and me working on my own models where token optimization has resulted in a 98% reduction in token cost, especially with agentic processes. So agents don't read words, they read tokens, and every chunk in and every chunk out is metered, and that's how you get billed. All of these slides were generated in 4 minutes using AI, by the way. All right, so the price of tokens changes wildly based on the model that you are using. So for example, Opus 4.7, it was $5 on the input tokens, whereas something like Grok 4.1, looking at 20 cents. Gemini 2.5 Flash, 30 cents. So the model that you choose has a big difference. And there's both input tokens, what you feed all the context, all your prompting, and then there's the output tokens, what the models deliver back to you. Typically, the ratio between input and output, depending on the task, it's usually like 80% would be input tokens and 20% output on average across all tasks. But that changes very differently based on what you're doing. Sometimes you've got agentic processes where they're just loading up context, and you might have 10x more input versus output. But the majority of the time, you're feeding in tons of context and you're getting less out on the output side. But because the output side is so much more expensive, it sort of is fairly equal weighting on cost. So understand that you should know what tokens are. You should know there's very different prices across the models, and that there's different rates for input and output. And the good news is that the cost of tokens for these models is dropping roughly 10 to 20x per year. So we saw Gemini, it was 32x drop in token cost over a 1-year period for the Gemini model series. The ChatGPT 4.0 model, it was a 280x price decrease over a period of 2 years. Now, the costs are rapidly dropping for existing models, and there's some wonderful open source models coming out of China that are very cheap to run. We'll hear some of that from our experts. So just know there's different models. And here's an example, 30x cost difference. So if you were using Opus 4.7 to do some sort of like little check the status of this, like a really simple function when you could have been using Haiku, that's literally a 30x cost difference. Or on a monthly basis, that's the difference between $50 and $1,500. And thank you, Brett, for that reminder. I wanted to encourage, if we can get 6 more people to turn your videos on so we can have a full set of faces here. And if you hear something from the panelists that you like, or you have questions, any sort of reactions, use the React. It's kind of like how we can read the crowd and get a feel for what's going on. All right, just a couple more slides. So a chatbot is one trip. Agents can loop over and over and use way more tokens. So as we've entered the age of agents, this is where token optimization suddenly becomes super important. And another reason why this topic is pressing is because the next generation models that are just around the corner are looking to be way more expensive. So if you haven't optimized your AI processes and systems and agents, then suddenly Claude Mythos or Mythos Plus or Mythos Pro, whatever comes down the road, or GPT 6.0, we're expecting to see things like $125 for input tokens where we're paying $5 on Opus 4.7. So if you're not tuned or even aware or don't know how to measure it, and you stumble into some of these more expensive models and you don't have the maximum allowed overages properly set, you could be getting into massive, massive bills and just not even being able to use these models because you can't afford them. So that's why this topic is super important. Now, I had one more slide that my agent was designing, but I forgot to add it to introduce our panelists. Sorry, I missed pasting that one. So first introduction is Av. And Av is a serial tech entrepreneur and engineer with over 100 patents and more than 400 million in product sales. He's the founder of Banto, whose ShadowSense touchscreens are used in F-35 cockpits and CNN's Magic Wall. He also built Fluvio AI, which is building next generation AI voice agents. Now, me and Av and Greg are also in an AI professionals forum. We meet once a month with a bunch of nerds, and we share ideas. Av is also a member of EO Toronto. So welcome, Av, to the panel. Thank you for joining us. We also have Greg Asman here. Greg is the founder of the Asman Group, where he advises marketing leaders on AI, data, and MarTech strategy. Over 30 plus years of experience across sports, entertainment, financial, travel, B2B, and deep into AI. Greg is also in EO. He's from EO Atlanta, Georgia, and also a member of that forum with me. So welcome, Greg and Av. We also have Jeanette here from MyZone AI. She is an AI coach, and she will be moderating and facilitating the panel today. So look at that, right on time, 9:10. Jeanette has questions for us. So Av, Greg, there's going to be lots of questions. I'm not going to put my hand up. If you want to comment on the question, put your hand up and Jeanette will call on you. There'll be lots of times I'm like, this is out of my depth, and I'll just let you guys go with it. So let's pass it over to Jeanette.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Jeanette. Mike, if you could actually make Lou a co-host, just so she'll be able to let people in the room, as I don't want to be distracted. And
Lou, can you turn on your video so I can find you?
So actually, we'll just get started with a couple questions while they do that. I do not have a technical background, so I am excited to ask these questions. And so my first question is, what is the most expensive token mistake you've seen a company make just in this past year?
Well, I don't necessarily work directly with companies as much as I'm deploying models that I'm involved in. And I can tell you a stupid mistake I personally made just 2 days ago with Cloud Code. I thought there's a bug in my code and it was user error. And I told it, go ahead and figure this out. And I left, came back to go find out. that it ran all sorts of debug scripts because it couldn't find the bug. It was user error. So it just kept going and going and going, saying, I added the debug log. I'm now looking at the debug output. I now launched the app. I took a screenshot. I'm checking this. And I come back to go find out like hundreds of thousands of tokens have gone through because it didn't know it was dumb user error. So yeah, that happened just 2 days ago.
Yeah, I mean, not having some control on your agent loops will definitely start costing you a whole lot of money. I have one that it's kind of interesting, and some of you may be at this point where I've seen clients who are like, oh, we'll just add another Max subscription. We need another Max subscription. And they've got developers or usually marketers, in my case, using multiple Max subscriptions. And I'll say, what are we doing here? And when I look at like how people are prompting, they're really treating it like a chatbot. And obviously, like, why wouldn't you, right? Because that's kind of the start of it. But every time you ask a question, that entire context gets reloaded. So think of like a Lego, right? You have a Lego that's going to be starting here. You don't start here. You start here with your context and everything that's loaded. Then you ask the little question, but now it's this big on the next question and this big on the next question. So things are growing big. So like just learning to not treat it like a chatbot, I think will help save a lot of costs right there. But that's it.
So Greg, you're saying don't say thanks after a 10-hour long conversation with a massive context window, right?
Definitely don't say thanks. I know it's nice to be polite. I mean, you guys are from Canada. We're from Atlanta. Two cultures that are very polite. But yeah, you don't say please. Definitely don't say thank you.
I had one personal experience where I was running my Open Claw agent. This was before we moved to our own cloud-based platform, and it got into some sort of loop. And we use Slack as the main channel that our team is consuming the agents that we build on the back end. And Amy was just like posting to Slack over and over and over and over through the night. And I was sleeping and I woke up and there was all these like text messages, phone calls from the team, like, And so fortunately I was using the CLI connection, like the account. So I wasn't on API. It didn't run away, but it could have cost me thousands of dollars had I been on API. So actually I went out and I bought these Amazon Amazon Alexa plugs. Alexa, shut up. And so I have kill switches on my devices after that day so that I could, use my smartphone, pull up my Amazon app and say, hey, name, kill Amy, and the lights out on the physical device. So I think for me, that was the scary moment, was like, I didn't even know how to stop it. And my only solution was unplug it. But I'm like, what if I'm driving to Whistler? So yeah, they can run wild. They can go in loops. And if you don't have the right settings and if you've got the limits, you can burn through thousands of dollars pretty quick.
Yeah. A quick adjustment on that is to simply tell it how many times it's allowed to do something, especially in an error condition. So I usually set mine, say like, you get 5 chances to do this. And after that, send something to a log saying it's failing and why. And then that's when just a human needs to deal with it.
Yeah, I do think a kill switch is another layer on top of that.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, because occasionally they will just not follow the rules. They'll go off the rails and you won't be there to do it. And so I think having mobile access to turn off your server is probably a nice need to have in 2026.
And this kind of leads me into my next question is like, when does token cost actually matter for a small business? And when is it just noise compared to other costs?
When it costs you, when the ROI on the token cost exceeds what you'd otherwise be getting, it matters. If you're spending a zillion tokens that you can say, wow, that was a lot of money on tokens, but I now just 10x'd my developers' ability to do stuff. So I look at it like, what are the things, what are the nuisance things that people have to do that could be automated with these processes? Those are likely good candidates for spending tokens, and not I don't look at expensive in terms of the dollars. I look at it in terms of both the dollars and the opportunity cost. Because what we're really trying to do, and when I'm talking to CFOs about this, we're trying to free up cash flow, right? So sometimes when you spend the money on tokens or spend the money on the people doing the things, you have to look at, really what's your opportunity cost in terms of that spend and not just in tokens. Now, like, obviously we can be better about spending on the tokens, choosing the right models and things like that. But like to run, is it worth it to me to use AI to write a comprehensive PRD? Yeah, it's worth it because otherwise I've got to sit down there and think about it. I'm a much better editor than I am a writer. So I'd much rather go through and edit, but if that's saving my time, let's say that saves my time at kind of my rate to go out and do other client work, like totally worth it. I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but that's just kind of the economics of how I view things.
And this is definitely a challenge. And the way I look at it is, okay, you got to take a flight to meet with a client tomorrow. A last minute ticket is $3,000. How do you make a decision to go do that versus, hey, I'm going to delay it by 2 weeks because the flight's $400? Like, I mean, it's the same type of economics I look at personally. If I'm gonna look at it, and I keep trying to tell my team the same thing, which is, did you just spend 5 hours to optimize something in which before you could have gotten it done? Like, as in, how do you value your time? And I'm going to touch on this later as to when I use massive tokens, and I don't care. It's really, I'd say, Greg, I'd agree with you. It's about ROI. And if you're 10x, 20x, 50x what you are doing, then like it's worth it. Like that's how I look at it.
I think that the vast majority of people in this room won't need to worry about this yet because the vast majority of people are not yet running agents. We're sort of in that transition right now from chatbots to agents. So I think as long as you are on a subscription, like if you're on a Claude 20x or Claude 5x account, or you're on an OpenAI Pro account, they've got the same sort of 5x, 20x tiers. If you're working within those and you're tracking your settings, status, usage, and your usage is within those limits, they obscure that you can't even see the tokens that you're using. So most small business clients that have not yet got into fully automated agentic processes, they don't need to worry about it until they cross that line, until you see yourself. Like I've got some clients deep into agents, they've got like 3 Claude Max accounts at 285 Canadian per month. And as long as you stay within the CLI, like within the account, so there's 2 different ways you can get billed. API is the most expensive. It's 10 to 30x more expensive than going through an account. They heavily subsidize those. Just like when Uber first arrived, it's half the price of taxis, and now it's about the same. Just VC subsidized for adoption. So if you're on one of those subsidized accounts and that is powering your AI, I don't think you need to worry about it yet. But like those intro slides, you do need to start planning because it's a learning journey to master this. And once you evolve into agents, that's when it becomes a problem.
So what do you like? What's a realistic monthly spend, a token spend for a small business who is one kind of just jumping in or is building a few agents or maybe are on a multi-agent orchestration platform?
I don't know if that's there's a right answer for that, because somebody could just be on a ChatGPT $17 account and they're just literally send me this email, draft me this response, give me this output, and you'll never max it out, right? And then like you could be on a Claude Max Pro, walk away because like you're making dinner and forgot that this thing got into an endless loop to debug a fake problem, and then you suddenly used up most of your tokens in that one shift. So I think it's for me, that would be a very hard question to answer because there's going to be firms that are perfectly fine at $17.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to sort of how you're using it, right? Like, are you using it in cowork? Are you using it in code? Are you using just regular Claude? Like the usage, and Stephen Gibson asked this question in the chat, and I just replied to it. The plans are sort of fixed price, but not really, because it's that rolling window of usage. There's like that 5-hour window and the weekly usage. So sometimes you end up going into extra usage. So my advice typically is start with a plan that makes sense for your budget. If you find that you're hitting usage and you've optimized the way that you're prompting and you're doing all the right things in terms of starting new sessions and keeping things tight, loading documents into memory, stuff like that, and you're still going over, then it's probably time to increase the plan. I find that Anthropic is a little opaque in terms of like what 5x more and 10x more really means. So it's really like one of these things that you just kind of have to live into and see where you're at with things.
So I think I'm well positioned to answer this because we probably have 50 or so clients now that we're providing agentic services to, and so we can give you sort of exact numbers. I would say 90% of them are able to get all of their work done in early stages just within one of the existing either Claude Max accounts or the ChatGPT Pro accounts. So I would say 90% of our clients are spending 200 or less just to run tokens for a company with 10 to 30 employees. Now, the power users who are in sort of in the top 5%, some of them are spending $1,000 to $2,000 per month on top of that. But I would say 90% of SMBs right now are coming, if they do it right, if they're not going, you shouldn't be going through the API. You should be going through one of those subsidized accounts, accessing via CLI, not API. That's going to open up a bunch of questions, but that is, way, way cheaper. And to answer, to add off of what Greg is saying there, like they obscure, like they don't tell you how many tokens you're getting through those accounts and what you get on those sort of 5-hour windows or 7-day windows. That changes based on server capacity. The good news for those of you that are on Claude, when Dario sold his soul to Elon last week, they significantly increased the total amount of tokens that you could have in those various windows. Those numbers are always changing and they are obscured. So, but yeah, most clients we have are sub 200 US per month. But I see a lot of people, the minute they go to agentic from chatbots, like if you've made that transition with the masses from ChatGPT over to Claude, which is like your first sort of single agent. I know ChatGPT has some agentic stuff. I've been deep into Claude Cowork, Claude Code, and our own orchestration platform. That initial transition is usually people come over and they're like, oh, we're spending $30 a month for our ChatGPT accounts, and they sign up all their employees for $30 a month or 25 US, whatever it is, for Claude. And then very quickly, the administrators like keeps getting these notifications like so-and-so is out of tokens, so-and-so's, and they would like additional tokens. The big mistake I see people make is they authorize those. Do not authorize the overages because that will default to the API. And what we end up doing is just upgrading people from the 1x account to the 5x account. That's way, way cheaper. But we went from $30 a month for all of our employees. Suddenly, within 2 weeks of transitioning to Claude, everyone in our company was either at the 100 US or 200 US. But most people are not exceeding that unless they're real power users that are starting to build complex automations.
We have a question here from someone in the chat. So everyone feel free to put some questions in the chat. We have Greg and Av and people answering them, but we have one here is, can you use CLI now for self-hosted agent use?
You have
Well,
3 more
I don't
weeks.
believe you can self-host Claude at all. Like, I mean, there are stuff out there that I haven't looked. Like, I don't know if DeepSeek and some of the other Chinese models have CLI. To be honest, I was very strong on self-hosting for a long time because I wanted to fine tune, and the things have gotten so good that I kind of haven't touched my servers that I've all set up. But Greg, what have you done a lot of self-hosting these days?
I mean, we do self-hosting for sensitive data, so financial services clients mainly. And yeah, I mean, we'll typically use, we've been using Gemma for a lot, and Quen Coder for some of the
Yeah, I haven't used them at all.
things, but like, honestly, like there's other ways around that to, anonymize data and things where the squeeze may not be worth the juice these days.
Yeah.
On that, because what you end up saving in terms of model cost might cost you on the GPU, rented GPU or VPS side of things to set up, so it's like 6 in
Yeah,
one,
for
7
sure.
in the other.
Oh, and just as a line in the sand, all of my so we use Cursor, Claude, we're on GPT and Grok, and I'm the only one in the office that has Max on everything. Like, so I am spending 800 to $1,000 just because when I want to test something, when I need it, like I don't want there to be any limits, and I look at that as the efficiency that I get. But all of my team are usually on the Max on the thing that they use all the time, plus on the mini of the things that they don't use all the time. So just to give you context as to cost wise, that's just my organization, but we're on Cursor. We've just got anybody who uses their primary platform, I've given the Max.
Yeah, I will say, like, for my own development, and that we might get into this later, but I I do a lot of work locally, really, to save credits. So my kind of personal process is I might use Opus 4.7 to help kind of flesh out an idea in documents, but then I might take that offline, still using Claude Code, but I might connect it to Coder or something and have it actually write code offline. I may then have that reviewed. Which, by the way, just a plug for Mike and Andre. Andre's got an excellent code reviewer, so definitely worth checking out if anybody needs to do code review. But I may push that back out to, to a different model. So, I'll shave some costs by doing, some of that offline.
Yeah, my feedback on that is, well, first, I'm not sure if self-hosted meant physical hardware and running local models. I think that's a bit what Greg was talking about. So you can run local models on your own device or in the cloud. So I think, Greg, you've got these local open source models running on physical hardware, and that can be a way to save on tokens, but you're also paying for the hardware up
And
front.
the power.
And the electricity, my electricity bills have been going up with all my computers running here. But I think what I was getting from that question was CLI versus API. There's a big change that was just announced a few days ago. So CLI just means that you're able to connect a third-party tool to your account and use up the same tokens that you would see on, say you're using Claude Cowork and you're tracking your usage there. You can have another app running externally to Claude that's connecting to Claude and through that same account. And you're not technically supposed to do that most of the time. That door was closed for all the OpenClaw users about 6 weeks ago. There was a big sort of uproar on X, Twitter, if you heard about that. And it was really just Claude couldn't keep up with the tokens and they had to boot all these people off that were running these agentic processes. They were burning through $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 worth of tokens, but they were only spending the $200 for their max account. So Anthropic has been trying to shut down people who have been building tools on top of that account access, because you're supposed to go through API, which is metered and costs a heck of a lot more, and they've got their profit margin in that. So that door they've been shutting down. And unfortunately for us, like our model AI1 is running on CLI for Claude for most of it. And we've been preparing for this moment. 5 to 7 days ago, they said they're shutting down that sort of software development access, the SDK agentic kit for Claude. They're shutting it down on June 15th for everyone, not just OpenClaw. So if you have been accessing Claude through CLI, which you should have been if you're building on top of it, that door will close. The good news is we've already built a failover. OpenAI's GPT 5.5 sort of codex model, they are allowing people to still access through CLI. And Sam Altman said, we would never tell you what you can and can't do with that account. We'll see how long he holds that promise. But if he can hold that promise till the end of the year, we're not worried because we're failing over to OpenAI's 5.5 model for our general intelligence, and that we can still access through CLI. Now, if we had to go API to pay for those tokens, it would, instead of being $200 a month, if I say you were maxing out that account, you might be spending $2,000 to $4,000 per month on API. So big difference if you can go through CLI versus API. Now, this is a very technical detail, and I don't think we want to spend too much time on that. Just write down in your notes, understand the difference between accessing tokens via CLI and versus API. Talk to your favorite neighborhood chatbot, have it explain it, watch a YouTube video. It's important to know. But yeah, the Claude CLI access through their SDK, the software development kit, that door is shut as of June 15th. So if you are powered sort of against the terms of service for Claude, that door will be shut very soon, and you need to prepare your failover to 5.5 ChatGPT.
That kind of walks me into my next question about model selection. So can you walk us through how you decide which model handles which step in an agent?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, like when I'm coding, you're supposed to be changing from reasoning to the mid-level to the quick and the Opus 4.7 and all of that. And the problem with this is I myself have been confused as to how the context switching and the cache actually get hit. And Greg, you might actually educate me if you know more on this, because recently I read that do not change your model midstream because your cache hit is actually going to be higher than keeping it unless you desperately need to. So my developers realized that they were going to reasoning when they're writing code and going down to the low when they're asking questions, and they were racking up a lot more. But empirically, I mean, again, it doesn't tell you all of these details. I found it to be much more stable in the middle or the auto. I don't know. They keep changing this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the same. And by the way, like I've jacked my mic settings all the way up, so hopefully I'm hearable now. But if you guys can't hear me, I'm
no, it's good.
Effectively screaming. The way I've heard the same. The way I do it is, well, first of all, I like to take a step back and say what is the output that I'm looking for, and then empirically, do I know what type of model? One mistake I see a lot is assuming that Haiku is the worst model and Opus 4.7 is the best model. They're all the best model or the worst model, depending on your task. If you're doing a simple classification, then Haiku is great for that. It's cheap, it's fast, doesn't do all the thinking. It just, I go back to Silicon Valley. It's hot dog, not hot dog. Kind of things if you know the reference. But basically, I have a classifier that I have built as an agent that I bring into the chat. My classifier is a Haiku based classifier. And what it does is when I pose a question to it, it will come back and basically say, this is the best model for this is X. And built into that classifier, it can then fire up a sub-agent where, just not to get like too geeky about it, but like in your agent files, you could define the model that you want to use, and then it'll flow to the correct model. So if I say, hey, here's all of the people who purchased, X product based on Y email campaign, update the RMF model for them, then Haiku's going to be like, I can do this. But if it's like, what's the best way to communicate to all of the people who didn't buy this, that might take some more thinking. And it may be Sonnet, it may be Opus, but I kind of let the classifier decide and then kind of see what my token usage looks like. And, it's constantly sort of tuning that and tuning the prompts associated with that classification decision. But the way I look at it, like the simple rule that I use is if you're dealing with something that should be deterministic, so you're pulling data out of a database, or it's like a simple answer, use a simpler model. It's going to be faster and cheaper for you. If you're doing something where you need generative content, where you need more thinking, then level up the model up until the point where you're getting results that you like, not necessarily having to go all the way up to the thinking results. Sonnet is often fine for a lot of things. You don't have to go straight to Opus.
So what we've been doing there is, because we're building agents for multiple clients, we do the testing for them and we can see what works great. So for example, we recently built an open source CRM. It's Andre built this 10,000 lines of planning. The detailed technical scoping doc is 10,000 lines long. And he tested the output on Sonnet and the output on Opus. And then he had an agent compare the code and they were identical. And he's like, that's when he knew that the plan nailed it. Because normally when you take a big complex plan, like go build a CRM and 40 minutes later, you've got a custom CRM, we would always think Opus 4.7, the highest, or ChatGPT 5.5. You need to use the highest models for coding big complex projects. Not if you do the planning. So I would really encourage you to test if you can afford it. If it's something that you're going to be running regularly, run the output on one model, run it on the other, have AI compare the differences and say, if there's no difference between the two, then you can work with the lower model. Another thing we do is we build these automated workflows. We call them recipes within our platform. And so hopefully, like Av, you made me think twice. It's hard to test because we're behind the obscure data of the CLI. So, but my thinking behind that is when you have specialized agents in a process, like say you're building an agent. Agents are building agents, right? The first thing you need to do is gather requirements, extract all the information out of someone's brain about how a process works that you want to automate. You're uploading SOPs, you're interviewing the process owner. That usually works fine with Sonnet, right? But then we take the executive summary of all of that. We create the PRD or the requirements doc, the what the person is looking for, you turn it into an asset, and then we pass it to the next specialized agent that has a different role and a different model. Then when they're done with the scope and we're going to the next one whose job is to slice the scope into individual tasks and organize it on the Kanban board, like that's a lower tier model. There's more thinking here, so we break apart processes into multi-stages with specialized agents in each one. And they're typically passing sort of condensed summaries over to each other, and each one can have a slightly different model selection. So that's been working well for us.
What happens to the cache when you switch?
Cache, that sounds so fancy.
I'm just reading a question from the chat. I could be pronouncing it wrong. Do not.
So cache. Cache.
Cache, sorry.
So I had to study this one this morning because I had a whole list of things. I'm like, I don't know much about prompt caching. So according to Claude, that was helping me prep for this, some models like OpenAI, it's automatic prompt caching. They will look at the data that you're sending over to them and they will automatically cache things. And there's structural changes on how you build your agents that can screw that up. If you're dynamically changing things, like one of the warnings they said is sometimes people are putting date stamps or time stamps on the information that's going over. And so suddenly they have a timestamp that's changing and then it breaks the whole cache over and over and over. So Claude's rules for prompt caching are a bit more generous. They can reward you more if you do it properly. So prompt caching is something that I know I need to dig into and better understand. But you can save significantly if the models will figure out a lot of that for you, but there's things that you need to do on your side to take advantage of that. So I'm hoping Av or Greg, do you guys have experience with prompt caching?
Well, it's just what I read, and that's the challenge. And what I read recently was if you're in a coding project, it's better that you do not switch, because I guess maybe if you switch occasionally, it's okay. But, as a coder, I tend to ask a few questions and do some planning, then go back into coding, and then I'm debugging, then I go back. Now, in the past, I used to switch all the time. And first you get tired, you forget about that. You're just having the conversation. I was on a reasoning model that was burning up tokens like there's no tomorrow, the highest one. Then I went to Opus 4.7 right in the middle, and I stopped caching. I stopped switching models constantly. And I read somewhere that that's actually better, but I don't know. I don't have definitive proof.
And you know why it's so hard is because most of us are operating under the CLI. Like we can just see our usage. We don't see the exact specific numbers. So when I was
does a good job of telling you how many tokens it's caching up, like how many minutes, and it just shows you at the bottom of that CLI. But outside of that, it's very hard because that breakdown is not there, right?
Yeah. So we have to go off of the readings and experiences from people that are spending tens of thousands of dollars on API that are not using CLI, I think, to get a lot of those answers, right, Af?
Correct. But even then, it's still hidden. Like they're not giving you a breakdown of every way that token is being consumed or generated. So, I know that the biggest thing is going to be your context and what is the base prompt together with the context, with all the knowledge that it's actually churning through. And my guess would be cache is the second, because if I look at computer architecture in general, like cache hits or misses are big. And if you're changing model logically as a programmer, like that cache would be vectorized towards the specific model and the language and the semantics. So I can't see how switching the model would not flush all of that, because it's kind of like going from C++ to JavaScript and back to C. In my mind, in my simple programmer mind, I'm looking at it going from French to English back to French.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with cache is like a local static copy of something. So like in old school website days, you could cache your entire website as like a flat HTML file so that it doesn't have to render. You can store it and then it just reads almost like an image file. It loads faster. It's just an efficient way of retrieving repetitive content over time. And you can set like a TTL, or how long a time to live, how long that cache stays present before it gets refreshed. And so it's a technical thing you could look into, but prompt caching is definitely something that you should be aware of with token optimization. It looks like we don't have deep expertise here, but it's something that will become more important, especially if we have to move to API on these really expensive models.
Yeah, one other thing is like, I always had to bring it back to the dollars. Like 90% is about the amount of cost savings if you're caching things. So storing things in memory, including your prompts, or storing them in documents. My friend from Atlanta, Brett, I saw in the chat, brought up a thing about loading a whole bunch of documents in and having that read up front so that's stored. Totally agree with the overall concept. Kari has written a bunch about this as well. What I do though is I bring it down to a smaller set per session. These are the specific skills you need. These are the specific documents. Otherwise, you're getting into a data warehouse type situation where you put all the data out there, but it may not all be meaningful to the problem at hand. So in my documents, I will also include prompting that I would expect the sub-agents to be using. And that way it's read once and those prompts are baked in, basically.
We stole an idea off of Andrej Karpathy, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, the guy behind Tesla's self-driving model, and he was just acquired by Anthropic 2 days ago for a lot of money. He's now working there. He posted a concept on, it was the memory structures for agents using a Wikipedia type interconnected flat MD files. Let me break that down. So Wikipedia is a bunch of static documents that have tons of cross links to each other. And the markdown files are just basically text files. It's the preferred communication path for most agents. It's just simple. Doesn't have any bloat in it. So it's very token efficient. And so what he was recommending for most businesses, like you should have a local data structure. We call this sometimes a company brain. You might hear the word digital twin. And this is where your agents will connect to all of your different data sources using old school, non-probabilistic. When you hear probabilistic, think LLMs, like the results change probably every time you hit refresh. And deterministic is the old school, like if this, then that, more structured outputs, less creative. And this does not use tokens. This uses bandwidth. This uses tokens. This is cheap. This is expensive, right? And so one of the big wins that most businesses are not touching yet is creating that company brain layer, that digital twin, using deterministic web scrapers. Because what happens if you don't have a brain on your sort of agent server, whatever that is, then your agent will go out to your Google Drive and say you're looking at your standard operating procedures and you want to quickly answer a question, and your agent just connects to Google Drive. It's going to read and download all of those files. It's going to process them all and then give you a quick little answer. That's going to load up tons and tons of context and cost you a fortune. Now, if you have a deterministic web scraper that's going out there and has already localized all of that into a beautiful wiki structure of flat files on a local server, you've essentially built a cache layer to your company brain. So what we've done is our company brain synchronizes with like QuickBooks, with Asana, with our CRMs, like all of our different tools, our Slack, our email, our phone calls or Zoom transcriptions, all of that gets localized in the brain, organized, and the most commonly hit files will automatically be turned into this wiki structure. So our company brain has 3 layers to it, and part of that is to reduce token consumption. So when you have that company brain or the digital twin, that itself is a massive reduction in tokens, and it speeds up the performance of your agents. But if you add that wiki layer, so I used to just have the sort of vector data stored in a knowledge graph, write those words down, ask ChatGPT later with the company brain. Then we added on the wiki layer, and then it's always looking through and saying, what are the 500 most relevant documents that we can turn into flat files that the agents can kind of quickly orient through? And quite often they don't even need to go into the database. They get their answers faster. So there's multiple types of caching. And I think that is an example of using the company brain to essentially build a type of cache that really reduces the use of tokens. And almost nobody is touching these things right now. All right, you guys' brains hurting it? I warned you, this is the most technical workshop we've done so far. Hopefully the stuff that you don't know, you're just writing down notes and you'll know the things that you don't know, and then you can go off and research them. Yeah.
Which actually going, taking a step back on just kind of the architecture is, what's your thoughts on single big agent versus multiple specialized agents? So which wins on cost and which wins on quality?
I would say what's the role of the big agent, right? Like, what's are you building a Swiss Army knife that's got like every single tool in there and it's got to read through all of that stuff? My big agent is an agent that I call my supervisor, and my supervisor knows all of the skills that my smaller agents know. And my rule is everything has to go through the supervisor, but the supervisor itself is not allowed to do any work. Because I don't want the supervisor to start hallucinating things and going off track. Its whole job is to say, I know a guy, here's my writer agent, or here's my coder agent, or my reviewer agent. And there's a lot that goes into the supervisor agent to make sure that it stays on track. But then I have all the point solution agents, none of which are creatively named. They're all like, agent 1, agent 2, things like that. I guess I could give them personalities. But I also say, like, don't just swarm or build like these agent teams and things. Like people get like super like quantified, like, oh, I've got 50 agents running. Like, I'm more like, I just need enough to do the job. I don't actually pay attention to how many agents are running. I just want to know that the right agents are running.
Yeah, no, it's actually to tie in what you said, Mike, and also what Greg said, talking about the deterministic, like, it actually makes a huge difference. So I'll give you a real world problem. So we build phone agents, right? Lots of companies have experimented with phone agents, and a lot of phone agents do really poorly because of conversation bloat, determinism. Like, for example, I'm going to take an order. Okay, I took an order of 10 different things, and I want you to list that out from the conversation and create a summary that can go into an invoice, and then something else will take over. So for a long time, I fought with conversational LLMs and picked all sorts of models to make that job go well. And it will make horrible mistakes. Like, it is just makes up stuff. Hey, I thought you ordered 6 things. Perfect example, customer ID. I'm going to go check out your customer ID, and I want to put that on the order. Sometimes the customer ID is actually correct. Sometimes the customer ID says Mike Schwarz. Sometimes it'll go your phone number. And I'll be like, what the hell? I prompted you to take the customer ID from the database. I'm sorry, made a mistake. I think your customer ID is Mike Schwarz. Okay, like, it just messes up. So what we realized is if you're doing work that has to be consistent and deterministic, you have to use a different model. A different model is looking at the data, pulling out the customer ID, then you run code with it to go pull that together. And then when you're having a conversation, have a conversation. So it really depends on what you're trying to do.
I think we brought in the next question there, and that's a really valuable optimization strategy that I do. So I have an agent, it's called my token trimmer, and it does a bunch of things. And one of the things it does is it will analyze whatever I've built. It could be a simple agent, it could be a skill, it could be an automation, it could be a workflow, it could be a piece of software. And one of the many steps that it cycles through on its workflow to optimize for tokens is it looks for situations where you are using probabilistic software that could be made deterministic. And almost always it will come back and say, oh, well, not only can we save you 28% of your tokens by switching this from the LLM to just old school code, but when you move to deterministic, you also get more reliable outcomes, right? So there's many situations like there, for example, you could use old school deterministic programming to go into the database, grab the name field and pop it in there, where by default, it might be saying using the large language model to analyze that and extract what it thinks. And because it's probabilistic using statistical theory, that's why 1 minute you're getting my name and the next minute you're getting my phone number. Well, for me, that's not only just you can harden, I call it like almost a hardening and making the code outputs more consistent by getting as much as you can to be deterministic, but it also reduces tokens. So that's one of the things that my token optimization agent looks for. It combs through whatever code, whatever prompts, whatever, and says, you know what, just drop in a little bit of JavaScript here and you're going to save 9% and you'll get a consistent output.
That's great. That's a great technique.
But back to Jeanette's question, so big agents versus small. I think small specialized agent teams win in terms of performance most of the time. We saw that recently, the Claude Mythos model that we're all kind of worried about. I don't know if you guys saw my post, and I was freaking out about the fact that big tech and government are all playing with this while we're like, wait and see, like, what's the super intelligence that can apparently hack anything? But the claim to fame for Claude Mythos was its ability to hack almost anything. Things that hadn't been touched in 27 years, never been hacked before by a human, suddenly were hacked. They also did tests with a whole bunch of specialized smaller agent teams that attacked the same problems, and they were able to get the same level output as these advanced models. I've seen case studies of that over and over again where small specialized teams are outperforming single agents. But if you have to think of like when an agent boots up, every single skill, every single tool gets loaded into its prompt, into its like starting system file header, whatever that's called, right? It boots up and it adds to context bloat. So my token optimization agent, for example, was looking at my SEO manager agent, looking for optimization opportunities, combing through my brain, understanding exactly how we do things, and said, we can see 90% of the time that you use this SEO agent, you're just running audits. And then 10% of the time, you're doing other things with it. I recommend you divide this agent into 2 specialized pieces because you've loaded up these 12 skills and these 4 tools and these but this agent doesn't need 90% of that. And so when you have these specialized agents, you have way less skills, way less tools that you have to boot up for that specific agent. So back to what you were saying earlier, Av, I'm not worried about, resetting the context from scratch when I move from agent to agent because they're passing along the specialized, summarized information that they need. And that next agent has the exact tools that it needs. And it's opening prompt, like the agent MD, like the loading instructions are so much shorter and smaller. So I think in the world of agents, you want to move highly, highly specialized, even splitting instead of having a sales manager that can create proposals and decks and this, have 5 different types of sales agents with very specific things that they can do, way less tools, way less prompts, way less sort of opening bloat. That's the way I've been approaching it. But again, I haven't been able to test accurately because it's all obscured behind that Claude Max 20X account. I'm just going off of reading and what feels intuitive at this stage. Yeah.
And you're bang on. And again, when you're doing, by the way, Greg, my strategy is the opposite. My manager AI is actually very thin because it's trying to be, hey, you're not really reasoning. You just need to do the task. So you need to go ahead and create this prompt. You need to go ahead and do this. We actually have a manager AI that dynamically creates the voice agent prompts in real time based on the context. And that thing is very thin and lightweight because I want it to be deterministic. Whereas the large language models that are doing the creative thinking. Now, coming back to what you just said, Mike, but if you're in a coding session, sometimes I let the context and everything bloat because there's a reason why the UI is here and how it's connected to 15 different elements. And I'm always worried that if I collapse everything and go to a new chat, it forgets why it did it and suddenly it starts making mistakes.
Ooh, I got something for you, Ab. So, and Tomas might want to step in here because Tomas is the human in the loop expert I have hired to review my code because I'm not a developer. I'm just winging it. I understand architecture, but I don't touch the code. Tomas is the one making sure I'm not building a spaghetti code. And oh man, my goodness, I only slept 3 hours last night. I think I just lost my train of thought. It was a good one. Oh, what was it?
No worries.
So what you described for me there is that you're missing memory files that the agent needs access to when it boots up. So every agent is, if you've heard me say this before in one of my talks, forgive me, but have any of you guys seen the movie Memento?
Mm-hmm.
Memento, go watch it. It's awesome. It's probably 20 years old. There's a guy that has a short-term, well, I don't want to spoil it, but I'm going to spoil it. It's 20 years old. So he has short-term memory loss. He wakes up every morning and he has to go around his house, look at clues, look at post-it notes, and try to figure out what's going on. And he thinks it's some big giant conspiracy. It just ends up that, I don't know, it's a really fascinating movie. But agents are like that. They boot up and they have no recollection of anything other than the memory files that you provide to them on startup. So what you were saying, and I was the same thing. I used to keep, when I was developing, I would keep all my context there because it knows my architecture, it knows all my decisions, it knows everything. And then what I learned is when my agents boot up, I use that sort of Andre Karpathy wiki structure of MD files so they can intelligently route themselves and grab all those little post-it notes that they need to know. What is the architecture? What are the naming conventions? How do I connect to here? What am I doing there? And so they boot up very efficiently. If I was to go back, like I can actually see this. I can see how fast I'm burning through tokens. And I felt it anecdotally that I burn way less tokens. I actually get a specialized agent so every time I build an application or an agent, I now have an agent manager for that agent. So I can go back to it and it has part of those memory files will say things like, what's the architecture? What were key decisions that we made? What are our goals? What's the original PRD, like the requirements doc? Where's the scoping document? How do these wireframes work? Where is everything located? And so that's how I boot them up efficiently. So that if I wanted to update my brain, the company brain or that digital twin using a developer agent, it would spend 5 minutes just going through all these files, getting all the context that it needs, burning through tokens. Whereas if I have the brain manager agent and I have a specialized memory structure or all those little post-it notes, often referred to as like agents MD or Claude MD files, those boot up instructions, if they are structured properly, and not in one massive file, but an intelligent wiki structure so that it can go through links and find exactly what it needs without reading everything. I feel that it boots up way, way faster and you don't need to have those long bloated sessions. But if that's all cached, I might be just listening to Andre Karpathy. I don't have the ability to test it. It seems logical. That's what I'm doing. Tomas, you audited the code that I built. I'd like to ask your opinion on there. Like, was it adhering to that architecture at all? Like,
yeah. For the most part, it was. The way it was built with the different modules, they all are referencing the same technical criteria, the same kind of design philosophy, and so they were quite consistent for that. One other comment I can add here is that especially when it comes to software development, there are some different it's different use case than a lot of like data processing or generative stuff. So like a big trend in software development right now is to use something called spec-driven development. And there's a number of different frameworks, one from GitHub, a couple other ones that are kind of really good ways of organizing exactly the stuff you were talking about, Mike. You know, what's the purpose of the code base, what are the technical decisions, what are the modules, what are the changes that have taken place. And that's a good way to kind of preserve the important context, because I think to Ab's point, sometimes you need it to really have a holistic view of the whole thing, and you can take advantage of that larger context for it to make the kinds of changes where you need that.
Yeah, and Mike, you're absolutely right from an architecture point of view. My problem stemmed from, hey, we're debugging something, and okay, we put this here because of there's a reason and that this failed and don't try that again. And that data was coming in formatted this way. And then it remembered that when I make the next button. But if I squash the context and memory, it will make the same original mistake. And I myself forgot, oh, geez, how did we fix that mistake? Then I'll burn through a whole bunch of context to reinvent. So one of the things that I have right now is I'm actually on a Cloud Code session where it's completely maxed out and it's telling me, like, I'm really frustrated because it will not let me chat anymore because it says there's too many images, there's too much. I don't care if I burn through 50,000. There's specific things that we figured out on why we're doing this UI. I just want to finish that one, view. I went to a brand new context and I'm realizing it's making all the same original mistakes, but it's like 2 weeks ago how we fixed those bugs. And I myself can't remember.
I feel like most of the time that works, especially if you're using Claude Opus 4.7 through CLI. It has a 1 million token context window. That means it can handle roughly 750,000 words of context before it starts forgetting things. And Av, what you're explaining, it makes sense. But if you can train your agents every time there's a key decision or a bug or what have you, it writes it to those specific memory files. It's a form of compaction, right? So
of course,
compaction, you have all this context. We'll just extract all of the key information that you need, write it to those flat memory files.
Correct.
And I think you can probably do the compaction, some of it deterministically. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
But it's a form of compaction and then it becomes permanent memory, because the risk with what you're talking about is if you don't have those memory structures in place, eventually you do hit your context window. It is easy to hit with agents because they just keep going through the night and right. If you don't have that in place, when you exceed the context window, it'll start forgetting things. You're like, oh shit, I wish I'd pulled out all those key decisions, all the bugs, stored them locally on flat files. So yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's an important thing to store, like until later. That's part of the problem.
So one thing I do with all of that also is when I'm doing a check-in, I typically do a git check-in on every feature, add, or change, but I have it generate a notes file as well, kind of like a what did we learn? And I check that into Git as well, because every now and then it's like, okay, I didn't load that into context, but I remember I had that, and
That's
it's easier. It's easy to say to it like, hey, where was that note file about this thing? And then it can like go search my Git repository pretty quickly.
Here's an example of the architecture document that I used before any of my agents were allowed to touch the portal, which Tomas is the human in the loop. And if you're building things, make sure you want a friend with a boat. You want a friend who can audit your agents. These things are important. So they would have to read this, and it would explain exactly what the portal is, what all the different modules are, the architectural structure of that, the various development standards this is the shell and the React and the front. So it would have to read through this, boot up, and it would instantly know. And that's how I'm glad to hear Tomas found a fairly consistent code from application to application. Because if you're not careful, because it's probabilistic, you'll start in one language and then you'll end up in 5 different languages and technologies. And a real developer will open up the hood of your software, be like, what the heck is going on here? Like, put some cheese on your spaghetti code. So that's an example of the sort of one of the memory files that I provide. But yeah, like we heard just mentioned there, any change logs, any just key decisions, any sources of truth, they're all different files that get written in different places.
So I'm going to change it with this next little question is triage agents. So cheap model routes to expensive model, essential pattern, or overhyped?
Triage. Sorry.
I mean, if that's like my classifier, I would say it's pretty essential for larger things. Otherwise, just go straight to it if it's something smaller. Like, I don't run everything through a classifier. If I'm building like something really static and quick, like just let it build.
Does someone tell me what's a triage agent? Like, it's going to go into a situation and first, categorize the situation and determine what the optimal model is to solve the problem after we've triaged.
Really? That's how I understood it. Does it mean something different?
I mean, I pre-triage just based on what the task is. I know that if it's a requirements interview with a client that I can get away with Sonnet. So I've pre-triaged, like I do my model assignment to the agents and their responsibilities on a specialized agent by agent basis. So I guess my stuff is sort of pre-triaged.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you had a random customer support query come in and an agent is tackling it, and you had a triage agent first analyze that and then optimally select the correct model routing dynamically before. I agree with Av. You don't want to be switching models mid-session because you'll blow out the cache and you'll lose context, and don't do that. But like model selection dynamically, if you have random things being assigned to your agents, for me, it's like, this agent is only getting sales proposal requests. This agent is only getting customer service requests, and they're always predefined. I don't have any wild things that are sent at my agents. And also, I never let anybody just talk to my agents. It has to go through another process for security reasons. So I've never found the need to use a triage agent. I do a lot of testing where I will say, hey, this beautiful sales deck, we did in Opus 4.7. It was a 10.0. Can I do that in Sonnet? Can I do that in Gemini 3.5? I'll do that testing and then make that selection. But I guess if you have dynamic random things hitting your model, it would make sense to have a triage agent quickly decide the optimal path, or using something like Open Router that has, hundreds of models that it could dynamically route from. That, I guess that's kind of a triage model where Open Router, check that one out, write that one down. It's pretty cool. I think you pay about a 10% premium, but then it will dynamically choose the right model from a list of hundreds. Open Router is also really neat to track the trends and which models are being used for what. They've got some beautiful analytics. So you can see, marketing companies are using these tools and software companies are using these tools. And you'll see cutoff dates, like a new model, like the Gemini 3.5 model that was released at the Google I/O conference a couple of days ago. I haven't tested it yet, but if you want to see how it's being adopted by different industries, go to Open Router and you can literally see when new models come into the market and where they're grabbing market share from. So automatic triaging, I think, could happen through Open Router. But for the most part, I have predefined models for very specific specialized agents, and those decisions are made before they get their task.
I was just wondering if, from a call routing, are you doing any kind of triaging there, especially like if you're doing any customer identification or things like that?
Yeah, we do. So that's all done on the manager level. So on the manager level, before we actually connect with our with the actual conversational agent, we're pulling in the caller ID. There's a RAG model of caller history. If the clients want, information on previous order history, support tickets, all of that gets compiled in real time into prompt and dynamic variables. So the agent boots up with knowledge of, I'm calling you because of this, and this is what you're calling about. Let me immediately jump in. So it also reduces the latency. It increases the efficiency of the model. So, and then a lot of those manager models are lightweight models that are much more deterministic code together with the model. So we are real-time compiling prompts based on as much customization as we can determine. Is that the question you're asking, Greg?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm going back to my old days of phone trees and setting up IVRs and things like that. I didn't know if you had.
Yeah, and so the triage is done on the beginning and the end, because at the end, if there's a shopping cart, again, I found the simplest things that LLM agents cannot be deterministic, and it was just pulling my hair out, like even formatting a real-time SMS message or saying, this is a shopping cart, go validate it. Or here's the purchase shopping cart link, go put your credit card in order to go ahead and process something out. So we have one customer that has 2,500 different type of plants on an online catalog. So not only do you need to be conversational, but you have to pull in SKUs and say, oh, you're looking for the sweet cucumber. That's 250A, and this is the packet size. And let me actually get the price for you and put that into the shopping cart, generate a list out of the shopping cart from a Shopify link, and send that to you to go check out. So there's just so much interaction between the triage oversight agent together with the LLM. If you ran all that on the LLM, it'll blow up the tokens, but at the same time, there's some really cool, complicated things you can do when you put multiple agents to work with different models. There's no question about that.
And I think you're forced to do serious model switching on voice agents. Like my voice agent, I connect with 11 Labs and Twilio, and then I can talk to them, and it's awesome. And they use very fast. I think I'm on probably Gemini 2.5 Flash. You have to grab a model that's really fast, low latency, fairly dumb. But then we architect the voice agents. They're really just collecting information like, what can I help you with? What do you want? And if I'm like, go ahead and build something for me, they're going to spin up a developer agent that's working on a very different model, pass my prompt along to them, and they're running on Opus 4.7. Or if I'm like, hey, just go to my calendar and tell me my next available meeting spot, and people use Haiku and be able to do that fine. So that's, usually I have the voice of like a lightweight fast model that's just collecting information, that's spinning it up to the sub agents, and each, again, it's all specialized agents with different roles, different model selection for each. I believe that's the winning recipe.
Agreed.
I have a question here from the chat. Is there any hidden costs associated with auto start and auto stop sub agents?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to prompt everything correctly and have a very clear understanding of what that agent is going to go ahead and do. So it's all part of your testing. Because these agents are starting up garbage in, garbage out, right? Like it still stands from a data structure. If you give it a massive transcript or the context, like how big is the token that you're actually passing to these agents? Like you have to analyze every aspect of it. But I think that's what the question is asking.
Yeah, I had, and I guess also how do we define costs? I had a real productivity cost with an agent. Basically, I have a thing where it writes a plan, writes the code, that does a code review, or 3 different agents running on every update. And the code reviewer hung because it reads both the plan and the code in order to check and make sure that the code is doing what it's doing. And it wrote hundreds of tests, and like at that point it filled the buffer up. And what it should have done was probably stopped it at a point. So learning experience for me, I woke up the next day and said, oh, nothing's done. And that was probably 3 hours of, time in my day that everything should have happened overnight. So, there's those kind of costs as well. From the hard token costs, yes, there's the system prompt repetition. Every time it starts up, you've got to give it that. Again, there's, those round trips that I kind of just mentioned. So yeah, all that rediscovery has a cost. It may not be a huge cost. And also if you go back to what we were talking about before with creating documentation and things, if it knows to read that smaller document, which is sort of akin to a compact command, but tell it like keep checking that document instead, that might help as well. Like a session continuation prompt, some people call them.
If I was going to have agents that are automatically starting up on their own, I would be analyzing, similar to the debate with sort of Av, if they're just restarting the same session at a specific interval and the context just keeps building and building over time, there could be some real hidden costs there. At the same time, too, if it's starting a new session every time and that all could have been cached and useful, then it's going to have to boot up and do a bunch of extra things. Every time you initiate an agent, there's like this sort of hidden cost. So for automatic agents, I would look at, is there going to be context bloat if they just keep coming back? And how am I compacting that? Is it necessary? Or am I better off to start a new agent with the right memory file so it boots up efficiently? Those are some of the questions I would have. But I find that with automated agents, some of the mistakes I've found, it's kind of like, have you guys ever gone on those journeys? Usually when you're having a cash flow crisis as SMB entrepreneurs, that happens usually once or twice a year. Or like, oh shit, we need to cut cash. What do? One of the first places we go? Subscriptions, right? Look at all these random things that you sign up for and you forget about. Especially if you go on your Apple phone subscriptions, like, oh crap, I didn't realize I'm still paying for Paramount Plus. We hadn't used that in 4 months. And those things are all over our businesses. We're starting to see that now within agents and agentic processes. And we forget about that because if you have, like I had an agent running for a client on a demo server, just a proposal using my API key that was doing deep research on all of her competitors every month and logging that into this brain so she could run this industry analysis. It was a proposal. I forgot about it. I had this subscription cost. She had 20 competitors doing it. Was a Perplexity deep research running once. It was a Sonar, the short, cheap one, and then once a month deep research. Tons and tons of data, tons of tokens. And, I was maybe a couple $100 a month, but I found it a few months later. So I would say, like, be careful with your automated agentic functions. quite often, like we're in this age of like, holy shit, look what I can do. Look what I built. But then you're like, oh, I didn't actually need that. And I forgot about that. And so you get this sort of like hidden token cost all over the place. And don't forget too, that all of this is obscured for 95% of us that are hiding behind an account. Because our token usage as a society, as individuals, is going to do this. So these are skills that you need to master now, because pretty soon you're not going to be able to hide behind those VC subsidized accounts, and you're going to be paying for the API. So just because these things don't affect you yet doesn't mean they won't very, very soon.
I have another question here. Are MCP servers helping or hurting token efficiency in practice?
Do you want to get into it before I get
Go
off
for it.
that MCPs?
Go for it, buddy.
So first of all, let's define because we warned people this is technical. There's a lot of non-technical people in the room.
Right.
So MCP server, like in the olden days, we had API connections. It would connect two software systems together. In simple terms, think of it as the plug that connects one system to another system was API. There's a new AI-friendly way of doing that called MCP. It's a different way. It just leverages the intelligence of AI to do it in a bit more flexible and an intelligent way. And it is critical. It's one of those key factors that ushered in the age of agents, because it made it very easy for agents to talk to each other. So right now we're analyzing this sort of new way of connecting data systems together. Is it good for tokens? Is it bad for tokens? Greg, over to you.
So here's the visual I'll set for you. Let's say you're sitting at a desk and you have a telephone for each thing that you want to call. You want to call Gmail, you want to call Slack, you want to call some other server, called Design, Supabase, whatever. You have phones out here for each of those, and they're taking up all your desk space, and now you only have this much room for your computer. Well, that's what MCPs are basically doing to your context. So now maybe you only need Slack. Okay, let's get rid of all those others, and now we have a Slack one. So an MCP in and of itself, not bad. What a lot of people do is they just leave them connected. And so all of this definition is loading into their context. So it's great from a standardization perspective, but it's lopping off a whole bunch of your context right off the top if you're not actually using this. Like what Mike was just saying about subscriptions, like turn it off if you don't need it. That said, MCPs are typically going to be based on some sort of API. So the real question is, should I just build a skill that uses that particular API function? So we have a client that will update records in their email service provider. There's one API for that. It's got a batching commands. They have an MCP, but I don't need the whole MCP that's going to pull campaign data and everything else. I just need to load in new contact records or update. So we just have a skill that connects to that one API. Drastically reduces the overhead. So think about an MCP as a trade-off between, overhead in your context window versus ease of use. So if you're going to be using a lot of features of something, an MCP may be great to go. But
I tried a ton of AI.
Totally agreed. I actually have not used an MCP in a long time because I am a hard coding, old school, give me the API, post request. I want to just get that schema. I want to know what's going on. I want it to be deterministic. So a lot of my stuff is exactly that. Like as in, I played around with MCP. I think it's MCPs on some video generation and stuff. Like there's some cool things that you could do, but I haven't found a really big need that, I can only solve it with that. Like I'm okay with putting in a bunch of API stuff.
Yeah, two pro tips. One, run a /MCP command or Claude MCP list in your prompt and see what's actually active on your system. You're gonna find your Paramount Plus like Mike did. No, not picking on Paramount Plus here, but you'll find these things that are still connected and live. The other sort of pro tip that I like to give people when they say, "Oh, APIs, I don't know how to deal with them, I don't know how to authenticate." Right? Claude does. Just point Claude to the API documentation and say, "This is the one thing I actually need to do." You don't even need to know what the endpoint is. Let it figure it out and just build the skill for you. So two little hacks to maybe save some context for you.
And I just for those of you learning, I mean, the prompt I just used, I said, is MCP costing you more for tokens versus API? Act as a token optimization expert. I got a beautiful article about when to use, when not to use on the extra bloat. But it seems from my limited learning here that like when an MCP connects, or if you'd say you're on a cloud account and you've got activated MCP connectors for like 5 different, you might have Gmail, Slack, Asana, Calendar, a bunch of other things there. You're doing a web search. Well, all those MCP connectors are booting up and they are costing you tokens. So there is some hidden cost there as well if you have extra
Greg,
that you don't
to
need.
connect you, to add to your analogy, think of the MCPs. Maybe I'm wrong on this analogy, but think of it like as a panel of experts. You don't need the experts to be there. They're going to be charging you a lot more. Than the API call is like something very specific, right? So I just need to check your calendar. I just need to go ahead and do something on Gmail. The API is very specific and lightweight versus the MCP being an entire expert. You don't need the Gmail developer there at the table. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like if I'm going to, if I'm going to do one specific task or even a couple of specific tasks, and I don't need the full exposure. So like Canva, for example, like if I'm going to connect to Canva, I might only need a few things. But some of those things might be related. I might use the Canva MCP just because there's so much interrelated things. But Gmail, if all I'm doing is like polling my messages to see if there's somebody that I should urgently respond back to, I don't need an MCP for all of that. I can just use an API. Back in, I'm going to say the old days, which is going to sound funny to some of you, but back in the old days of make.com and N8N and running automation things, that's what we would do, right? We would find that one skill that we would need and it would run that call. Like that pattern doesn't go away just because MCPs exist.
And be careful because the AI will guide you down wrong paths, especially if you're like me and you don't have a software development background. My learning with just connecting to that Gmail example we heard from Greg is first I was using OpenClaw, and OpenClaw was using tokens to check if on a scheduled interval if my Gmail had anything. It was just burning through so much. And I asked it, how can we optimize this? It's like, oh, well, let's switch the Haiku model. It'll be cheaper. And then after a little bit of prompting and prodding, I'm like, can't we just do this in a way so that Gmail will automatically let me know when there's pending messages so that I'm not just going back and using tokens to find out you don't have any mail to digest? It's like, oh yeah, we can build this webhook, something push. I'm like, oh, why do we do that? That's free, So just be careful. AI will guide you down the wrong path, and you do need your HITL experts like Tomas and others in your corner. Also, a general thought, I feel like AI and the added functionality is making us a little bit lazier. Like when it's so easy to connect to something with MCP, like if I can connect to my QuickBooks with MCP, it just gives me all this extra intelligence that I can go through there, chat with an AI, and will crawl through QuickBooks and tell me any accounting discrepancies or missed invoices. It can do all sorts of incredible things. And I'm so excited about the ROI that I forget about some of those hidden costs. Or if you structure that properly, you can have a deterministic web scraper that brings all of that data down to your local layer, can cache it properly. You're not using MCP so it's almost like these tools and the Claude Max accounts are making us a bit lazier. And that's when the tide goes out, we might get a bit exposed there. It's going to be much, much better to cache all that data locally on a server right next to your agents. And the way that you cache that with a company brain, with a vector data store, knowledge graph, wiki structure, all of that is, I think, the right way. And just having open MCP connections where you're crawling through all your Asana, you're crawling through all your Drive, or crawling through your CRM, that stuff burns a lot of tokens. So it almost like enables us to burn more tokens and get more intelligence out of our systems and makes us a bit lazier. I don't know, Av, am I thinking about that right? I feel like I might be.
No, I think you're bang on. Like that's exactly like, again, when I'm doing real-time phone agents, like, I mean, you could be talking for 30 to 40 minutes, like, and you can't have that cost $10 a call. Like you just can't. Like, so it forces you to go break it down into small chunks, and you are absolutely like, I mean, I live on like, again, I'm a C++ coder from day one. So an API call to get the right type of schema of a data for me to process, like I still can't get over this. Let the LLM just do it. Like I still have a difficult time. Like I want to debug through the LLM to go find out why it missed that. Like I find it difficult.
I do want to like just hit on one thing, just as a business user and taking a non-technical perspective, and not that I'm anti MCP. Yeah. It's just it's a lot of bloat potentially. Go ahead and use the MCP. Like if you don't know what's going on and what you want to do, use the MCP for a little bit. See what are the features that you're commonly using and doing, and then go figure out how to take those features out. If you're not using the rest of it, you don't need it. If you find you're using everything, like go for it. Maybe that's just the price of overhead that you have to pay. That's part of your operating system at that point. But so I'm not saying like jump straight to API, although I think I would typically. But there's a place for them. I've yet to see a use case where anybody needs a dozen MCPs loaded during a session for something like that. That seems like a lot of bloat to be careful of.
Question for the audience: how many new acronyms have you written down with question marks in this call?
I know we only have 3 minutes left, and I really want to ask this question. So token prices have dropped 80% in the last couple of years. Does any of this matter in 12 months? Or are we optimizing a problem that's solving itself?
Well,
it's more expensive.
I'm actually going to make a comment on this because I started off, just to date myself, on a 6502 processor, like with 64K memory, and writing assembly code where it had to be really tight. And today, you get these 8 terabyte PCs in which people write bloated code and it's still slow. I'm always for the elegance of code, okay? Because if you write code and structure things elegantly, when things get cheaper, faster, your stuff will only be better. This idea that I have to have the highest performance model with the massive data center as costs rise up through energy and all of that, like, I don't know. I'm still old school. If I can make it simpler, I'd like to make it simpler. It bugs me when things are not elegant. So that's what I'll say.
So one thing I do know, the prompts in general have been shrinking. So back in way back, like late 2025, when everyone was on the N8N train, we would have to use the scaffolding of these workflows to make sure that AI worked properly. And the prompts had to be really, really specific and all sorts of guardrails all over the place. And if you look at the amount of context that we have to deliver over time, it is shrinking because the models are getting smarter and smarter. They're just figuring things out, and they're doing it with less tokens, and the cost is rapidly dropping. So you ask that question, I'm like, oh shit, I hadn't thought of that, because maybe by the time, there's another 10, 20x drop coming, this might all be moot. But I think that the battles are won in the profit margins of all businesses. And I think that the most successful companies in this agentic era are going to be hyper efficient. The winners are going to have access to the most compute, the most chips, the most power, and the best data and unique business models. There's certain things that last off in the future. And I think those companies that are really, really efficient and they can afford to burn more tokens because they're efficient, I think that's going to be the competitive advantage going forward. Now, from our perspective right now on this, looking forward in this exponential curve, it's pretty hard to predict, but I would guess like you might have one marketing agency that's spending $20,000 a month on tokens and another one that's spending $50,000 to do the same thing. And it's like I think it's gonna matter because our use of AI is doing this. So even if the efficiency, what's that Jevons paradox here? Like the use is exploding exponentially. So even though the cost is dropping, our total consumption of these things is continuing to rise. So I do think it's going to matter in the long run.
Yeah, I think costs are going to go up, but I think utilization is also going to go up. Like as these things get cheaper or even just become baked in, there's going to be more expensive things that people want to use, or there's going to be more hardware. So I don't think it's going to it's obviously moving to a commoditized sort of thing, but the volume's going to go up. These people are building, huge companies and infrastructures, and they're not going to lower their price to nothing. So So I just want to respect everyone's time and just give a bit of a wrap. First of all, thank you so much for Av and Greg for joining us here today. We appreciate all the different perspectives. You can see there's just so much to learn here.
if you're ever feeling overwhelmed with AI, give you some peace of mind. Those of us that do this full time, we are equally overwhelmed with AI. It's changing so fast. So you're not alone. This is normal. We're going through a crazy transition for all of society. We will take all of this transcript context. We're going to turn it into a beautiful guide that Jeanette will then be emailing out to everybody who's on this call or RSVP'd, and recommend that you just continue learning and studying these things. I promise you, from everything I know, this is going to be a really, really valuable skill, and it's going to take you some time to master it. So start that journey now. And when the Mythos models arrive and you're already prepared for them, you're going to be sitting in a much better spot than somebody who was like, oh, I don't need to worry about tokens. I'm only spending $30 a month on my ChatGPT account. That's not going to last for long. And that's going to be a competitive advantage that differentiates the winners from the losers by the end of 2026. So dig in. Thank you guys so much. Good to see you. We have our next workshop on AI security with Rishi from EO Philadelphia. And he's been working with the NSA on AI security. So with the next big thing, we all need to, well, I say security, probably even more important than token optimization. You need to nail both, probably starting with security. So make sure you join up or RSVP so you can get the recording for the next workshop. All of those workshops are posted on our website, myzone.ai. But thanks again for our host. Thank you, Jeanette, for moderating today. Good to see so many familiar faces, and we'll hope to see you. I think it's about 3 weeks for AI security review. Thanks, guys.